Are any of you willing to again take up the cause of eliminating sales tax on groceries? If yes, why? If no, why not?
Yes. Why? Because it's immoral to tax food. It's absolutely wrong. We should not be doing that. And I know there's movement, and I don't remember precisely who was moving in that direction. Somebody's got a bill working on eliminating the grocery tax. I think we should do it. Frankly, we need to eliminate most of our taxes. We're paying far too much money, and we're growing the state at a ridiculous rate. What is it? It's grown 100% in the last 10 years. The state budget's grown 100% in the last 10 years. More than that, okay. Yeah, so we've got to stop feeding this Leviathan. We've got to stop feeding this monster. And this is a very small way to do it, but we need to do it.
So let me sweeten the pot here just a little bit. What can you as legislators do to sweeten the pot so that elimination of the sales tax on groceries can take place? Let's start at the end of the table.
Yeah, well, it would take, is this on?
It's on.
Is it on? No. Is it on? No. This one's on.
There we go.
Somebody from Rev and Tax and the tax issues will have to submit and start a bill. If the elimination of the grocery tax bill comes to the floor, I will certainly vote for it. I don't know how that end of it will start. It'll have to get through a committee. I hear a lot of people are for it. But I will caution us in one area. I don't know about anybody else in the room. I'd rather pay a little more sales tax at the store and not have any property tax. Is what I would prefer. But if this makes it to the floor, I will certainly support it.
Well, and I just so happen to have in my hand a question related to property tax, because I was going to combine the two. So let's do that now so we can have a thorough conversation. I'm going to ask the question as is, and then we'll go around, and then I'm going to sweeten it. Back in 2018, Idaho Legislator changed land rules to allow property annexed info cities to keep AG zones, sorry, I'm reading as is, even when the city annex increased prop values 10x, 20x. Can it get changed so annex equals FMV tax? Let me see if I can sweeten this, because when I read it, it was like, I got to ask property tax. There's so many situations that we hear in our state where property taxes have increased to the point where our seniors can no longer afford to stay in their homes. What are you as legislators going to do about that?
Can I go first?
Absolutely.
Okay, a couple of things to remember. Number one, your property taxes are directly related to your county. What's that? And cities. So it is not the state that is, all that money goes to your local jurisdictions. So when you put in a new library, you're going to pay more taxes. When you let that levy go for the school for the 10th time in a row, you're going to pay more taxes on your property. And there's a lot of people voting on those property taxes that don't even have property of their own. They're renters. So when people complain about property taxes, I always like to, of course everyone up here is going to vote yes on a grocery tax. The reason we're not all, a repeal of it. The reason we're not all excited about that is because it comes down to spending. It is the spending of the counties that is the problem. And until we start to go to the budget hearings and say, no, I don't want you to put, like my county up in Bonner, they're going to put a gym in their county building now for the employees. Is that something I want my taxpayers' money to go to? So if you don't show up to those budget hearings, it's the spending that is the problem. Now we can put exemptions in that, but we can only control it at a state level. Ultimately, the more they spend, the more you're going to pay in taxes, and it comes down to your county spending. I can't reiterate that enough. Sorry, I can go on, but I won't.
As far as protecting the elderly who are on fixed incomes and protecting them from being kicked out of their property because they can't pay their taxes, first of all, we have to go back to some of the root causes. Why is property tax such a big issue nowadays than it wasn't, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago? A lot of it is due to the exorbitant increase in property values, and a lot of that is caused by inflation. Inflation is an increase in the money supply, and if you look at the historical inflation rates, as inflation goes up, your wages go up too, but they go up at a slower rate, and they're always playing catch up. So as it turns out, you are actually getting a lower standard of living as inflation increases. And this especially hurts people who are living on a fixed income, either a pension, Social Security, or some combination of that. It gets to the point where some people that have owned their property for 30, 40, 50 years and were paying $400, $500 a month in mortgage payments, they're now paying sometimes twice as much in property taxes. It's certainly not fair to them. So they're becoming cash rich in the equity in their home based on this inflated price of homes. And oh, by the way, Idaho is the single highest overpriced real estate market of any state in the union, so that you will see a decrease in property values. It just has to happen with the business cycle. So this proposal that I've had, and I'm working with the Treasurer's Department here in Kootenai County on this, is if a person can't pay their property taxes because of a limited cash flow, they can take some of the equity out of their home, which is not doing them any good, and use that to pay off the taxes. Currently, since the law is so cryptically written, there are only 8 cases in the state of Idaho where this is being used. We want to clarify the law so that this can become a common theme for people.
Dale, I saw you bouncing your head over there. You wanna chime in on this a little bit?
Well, once this money is borrowed against the equity in your home, these people are not getting off scot-free. When they either sell the property or they die, the estate is settled, and all the back taxes plus interest, which is fair to the state, revert back to the state to cover their previous unpaid property taxes. So that's what we're working on.
Go ahead, Dale.
Go ahead, Dale.
Because I've got a lot to say.
Well, I know that remember when I said that I would rather pay a higher sales tax than a property tax? We have to remember that I spoke to a gentleman prior to the election, and he told me how terrible his taxes were. He spent a half an hour telling me and whining or complaining or reaching me at what he was doing. But then he spent the next half hour talking about all the services he wanted increased in demand. So we have a disconnect here. No matter what we do on taxes, it's a shift of monies unless we reduce agencies in the government and services that we all expect. There's no cure for this. Now, when my good friend over here, the idea of someone having to borrow to pay tax terrifies me. I mean, personally, there's got to be a better mechanism than that. I can't tell you what it is sitting here, but I certainly don't want that one. I think if we reduce the size of government, back to the immigration issue, if we reduce the size of those who are in our state using up state resources that don't belong here, I believe that those things will help us reduce government spending, and maybe our taxes wouldn't be so stinking high.
So, Vito, before I get to you, because I know you want to chime in, and then Elaine, I'll get to you guys in just a moment. Let me just sweeten the pot just a touch, because I think more than inflation is in play here with regards to the value of the properties. I'm not going to ask the question, but if I asked how many are from California, a lot of hands would rise. And as a result, property values are increasing because of the law supply and demand. What, from a legislative standpoint, adding to the property tax concept or question here, what from a legislative standpoint could be, if even possible, done with regards to that knowledge? Doug, let's start down here with you.
One of the things I think you're going to see this coming session is there'll be an effort to increase the homeowner's exemption. Back in the day when that was created, the amount was supposed to be roughly 1/2 the value of the average home in the area. it's fallen far behind that now with how much valuations have gone up. So, so I think there'll be an effort. I'm not certain how that will fare particularly in the House. I think it's probably got a good chance in the Senate, but that'll be something that will be coming along. Now, that does fall into the category of a tax shift. So if you reduce the amount of taxes that a homeowner pays, that will end up being, that burden will be taken over by other sectors that pay property taxes, particularly businesses. So, because as we've kind of discussed, the counties and cities are budget-based. They don't say, we've got X amount of dollars and this is what we're going to use. They say, this is how much we need, and then they tax you to get it. So, that would be some relief to the homeowners that you mentioned previously. And I'll leave it at that.
Elaine?
A couple of things. One is if we had control of our lands and could make them work for the people, then maybe your taxes would go down. The other thing is that we have to look at the makeup of the legislature. And I ran last time on repeal of the grocery tax. And when I get down there and find out that there's no path forward for that repeal, I as a person want that repealed, but if I can't get it through a committee and I can't get it on the floor and I'm told that a chairman won't even hear it, then I'm stuck. So we need to work on understanding how our legislature works, and that we've got to have enough people that want to see it happen to make it happen.
Heather, did you want to say something before Vito takes someone? Okay, go ahead, Vito.
I want to dominate the conversation. Yeah. The complexity, obviously, of trying to avoid a tax shift is so important. It's so important. So what are the taxing districts spending their money on? And if you get into those budgets and you begin to see, was it all social services? How much of the roads are being repaired? The bridges are another issue. But what is the money? Where's the money going to? What is the budget for Coeur d'Alene City? What is the budget for Kootenai County? They're huge. They're multi-millions. Where's that money going? And you say, well, then the state should pay that. We should raise the sales tax. You know, one option is beginning a tax on electronic transfers. If we did 1/1000th of a penny per transaction or per dollar that's spent through electronically, that would take a lot of the burden off us already. Many of us are using our debit cards at $2 or $3 a pop. So there's other ways to begin to tax that would alleviate the burden on the elderly and the homeowners. But getting there, as Elaine is saying, the weirdest part about it, this is what, 14 years, starting my 15th year? Not everybody in Boise agrees with me. I just don't get that. So all the cajoling and all the reasoning and all the rest of it, the system is in place, and it's one thing to argue about the power of the chairman and this, that, and the other thing. But the people in southeast Idaho don't agree with those of us in the north. And the ones in the south, Meridian and those areas, some of them agree and some of them don't. And then the Democrats lost, but they never agreed. Anyway, that's enough. I mean, the point is we want to avoid a shift, and we've got to figure that out. But property taxes are driven by counties, by cities, by the fire department, by the highway districts.
One last round on this one, because this is a very important topic. So I want to capitalize on, again, the national discussion. There was a big push towards governmental efficiency. And Elon Musk and Vivek are going to be forming a new group, DOGE, Department of Governmental Efficiency. I don't trust government, but I shouldn't have said that, I'm sorry. But from a standpoint of you're the legislators. You're the ones who are the experts with our budget. Where's the fat? What fat? Let's start at the end of the table. Let's work down. What's one fat item you would love to see cut from the budget? Dale, we'll start with you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
The funding of all DEI programs in the education system.
I'll definitely diddle that one.
No, you only get one. Come on now. No, I'm kidding.
Having just went through a big portion of the budget, I'm kind of like all over the place. I kind of always kind of default to Medicaid. There's only so much we can do there. That's been voted in. We have a partnership with the federal government, and oddly enough, the better we do as a state economically, our share of what we pay to Medicaid increases. But what I have found as we look through these budgets, and I can use one example, but I don't want to take up too much of the oxygen in the room, is that there is places where there's fraud and there's abuse, and it takes time to kind of really delve into the budgets at such a finite level to really kind of see what that is. You know, again, we always, there's a pie. You know, we get a certain amount of money that we generate here through taxes in the state. I don't like to infer any ownership of money. I believe that it's given to us by God. Our resources and our rights come from Him. There's a lot of talk about federal money, but we put about $10.6 billion of our state's taxes towards the federal government, and we get about half of that back. And the majority of that money goes to ITD for roads, bridges, and things like that, and the rest of it has to do with that partnership we have through Medicaid. You know, so when you look at two big chunks of money, you have to then really get into all the finer aspects of that budget to find where things aren't working. And that's a difficult task. It takes a lot of time. And yeah, but those are the two areas.
Okay, so getting back on track, real quick, something you'd like to eliminate, Joe?
Launch program.
Perfect.
The launch program is a program that was passed last year, unfortunately. And what that does is grant $8,000 to every high school student or equivalent, GED, graduate, not student, but graduate, to allow them for training in a particular industry. It's a Soviet-style planned economy. We're going to tell you where we're going to allow you to spend the money so you can get this education for a job that we think you should be doing. And it also shifts the burden to the taxpayer rather than the industry, which traditionally, when you went to work, those of us that went to work and got trained for a job, right, the employer used to pay for that. Now the state, you are paying for it. It's entirely wrong. And I will tell you that the support for this program is enormous among industry because they're not paying anymore, you're paying. So that's something that I would love to see us get rid of.
Tony?
I think the program with the largest impact to our budget is Medicaid. Right now, Idaho spends $5.9 billion on health services. That includes Medicare, Medicaid, and others, so forth. The second largest item is $5.2 billion for education. So if we could just peel back the Medicaid expansion and require drug testing, and if you're found to be a drug user, you have to go into some kind of recovery program, and then also work programs. You have to show that you're willing to give something to the community to get something back. This idea of freeloading is even beyond Marxism. Marx's theorem was that from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, and these people don't even apply the Marxist theorem. So that's where I'd like to see reform take place.
Vito?
Speaking of Marxism, public television, it's an easy one.
The lunch program that Joe Alfieri brought up, that is complete crony capitalism by our governor, and so that's a really good one. Education, we are not required to fund our colleges, and I think we should stop. We're required to fund our schools, our government-run schools, but we need to stop funding these woke indoctrination centers across our state. There's no need. And I just heard something the other day where a lot of these employers now are saying, just get a 2-year degree. We need employees so bad, and they're not coming out of there with any extra knowledge, so we'll just train them. Give them to us early. We need the employees, and we need to train them ourselves anyway.
covered pretty much everything, I would say, the expansion, repeal, and DEI. And I'm sorry, but government money shouldn't go to art on the side of a building or on the side of a road.
We're going to skip Kim. Go back to Doug.
Can I add though, Ed?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, so I think I've got one that I would like to maybe get rid of. It's a whole department. We've got a Department of Commerce that primarily functions to attract more people to our state. And I like to think we're pretty full. The budget this year was somewhere in excess of $200 million, so annually. There are going to be some functions that fall under that department that could be absorbed by other ones, but for the most part, I think that'd be a relatively easy Doge move.
Thank you all. Appreciate that. Now, just